welcome to this new episode, and today it's about breath work, and I'd like to introduce Edward. Hi Edward.
Hello, thank you for having me on your show.
How are you today?
I'm really good.
Very nice. So breath work is one of the modalities that is very popular in Koh Phangan, and I love yoga, and one of the steps of yoga is a pranayama. So I'm very keen to provide more information around this modality and delve into it with one of the experts in Koh Phangan. Edward, you've been in Koh Phangan for a very long time, is that right?
9.5 years. Yeah, that's a long time.
And I know that you are probably the master in Koh Phangan for a type of modality called rebirthing.
That's correct, yeah.
Wow. Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about rebirthing?
During your life, or can be past lives as well, you will experience various trauma, suffering, and conditioning. Now you experience that mentally, emotionally, but there's also a subtle energetic blockage or contraction that goes with it. The two go together. Now when you breathe, you're taking in air, but you're also taking on pranic energy, or sometimes known as chi energy in the Taoist philosophy. And with this style of breath work, rebirthing, those energy levels will gradually start to rise and rise and rise. And what will happen, or may happen, is the sheer force of energy inside of you starts to push out these energetic blockages. Mm-hmm. And these are usually emotional in nature. So it's very common for people to be in tears and various stuff come up. Also, that level of energy often puts you into a trance-like state, similar to deep meditation or hypnosis. And in these states, you'll often get insights about your life, about behavior patterns, about all kinds of stuff. And so, yes, in one way it's a very simple process, but it can be extremely powerful in how it releases stuff and what comes up.
It's fascinating, and I, of course, experienced rebirthing multiple times. And I can tell you indeed that my experience was very positive, and the modality is very high impact the way I experienced it myself, and particularly the first 20 minutes to half an hour, there's quite a little bit of effort that you have to put into really altering and changing your breath patterns. Yeah? But then I remember, kind of like going through some door almost, allegorically, and feeling a rush of energy going through me. And that started with me really sobbing and really crying and feeling really kind of sorry for myself, but also at the same time feeling lots of release. So like getting letting go of stuff. And then another phase, I remember particularly the first time, which was the more high impact one for me, when I started laughing and for the rest of the day I was really in a different space emotionally. That's really beautiful. And in Koh Phangan, I know you do classes, obviously, you've done training. So what is your journey into breath work and rebirthing so far?
Okay. Can I just say a little bit more about your experience?
Sure.
This is a very common experience. What normally happens in a breathwork session is the first, say 10 to 20 minutes, you're having to make an effort to breathe. Now usually, and it's around 20 minutes, some people a little sooner, some people a little later, once the energy levels get high enough, it's like the breath takes over. It takes on a life of its own. And it often will feel like you're not in control of it anymore. But there's an intelligence behind that. That's when the magic happens. Mm-hmm. And most of us carry some kind of emotional baggage inside of us. This is very common, particularly in the stress of Western life. This is very common. And so it's very common in the beginning for the tears to come up because all this emotional baggage you've been carrying, some of this is being released. Now, once stuff has been released, there's often a feeling of being lighter. Like some of this baggage you've been carrying is not there.
It's gone.
Yeah. And sometimes this brings joy because all of this stuff you've been carrying is like, oh. And that quite often brings laughter. It's very common. So
that's beautiful. And I remember, there were like maybe 20 people or so. in the shala, and the yoga is a yoga school, yeah, and maybe a third of them experience very strong emotional release of different types, yeah. And it's I know the modality itself is of recent development. Is that right?
Yes, it was actually. There's a number of different modern breathwork disciplines. The very, very first of them was rebirthing. And it was developed by an American guy called Leonard, who died a couple of years ago. And many people then took what he developed and then changed it and did various things to it. In my opinion, of the different disciplines, rebirthing is still my favorite. And it's very much, why are you doing this discipline? And for me, some of the disciplines are looking at short-term ecstatic experiences, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with ecstatic experiences. But for me, releasing this emotional baggage you're carrying, this creates the long-term benefit. Because once that's been released, that's it, it's gone. And so therefore there is a long-term change in the baggage you're carrying. And quite often, people will have beautiful experiences like you had, but it's later on they start to notice little things in their life are different. Things don't trigger and annoy them the same way they used to. And this is where the long-term benefits are. So this is why I specifically prefer, of all the different disciplines, rebirthing breathwork. But back to your earlier question. Basically what I do here in Koh Phangan, I do drop-in sessions. So if people want to come try it, or they want to do a number of sessions but have a big gap between them so they can process stuff. This I do once, sometimes twice a week here on Koh Phangan. And I've been doing that for nearly 7 years now.
Yeah.
And then about 5 years ago, I teamed up with a very good friend of mine, and we started hosting 6-day retreats. And with these retreats, we were going much, much deeper. And so each day, we would choose a different subject. So day one was looking at your core issue. All of us have various issues and patterns, and it's identifying what is the biggest of yours, and then working with that. Then day two was working on the inner child. So most of us, or many of us, have experienced either some trauma or some challenging environment when we were young, and we didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with it. And so the only way we can cope is to repress. And when we repress, that becomes what we call the inner child. And working with parents. Many of us have issues with parents. Then day three was looking at the chakras. Chakras can be very powerful to work with breath work, because your energy levels are so high, you can then channel that into the various chakras to help open them. Then day four was sexuality, looking at what negative programming you've taken on about sexuality, but also looking at how breath work can open up the energy system and, if you like, supercharge one's sexual experience. Day five was looking at enlightenment.
Wow.
Beneath every story or every belief you have about who you are, what's real, what's permanent, what never ever changes, but it's not noticed, it's overlooked. And then day six was your life purpose, your life journey. If money was no object, how would you want to spend your life? And so in the mornings we would go into various exercises and meditations and teachings, and every afternoon we would do a breathwork session, and we would introduce new tools that you can use with the breathwork process.
Wow, it's a beautiful journey. And it's not just experiential, it's also quite a bit of sharing and talking, etc.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And how many hours is it per day?
We would start usually about 9:30 in the morning, and maybe have around 2 hours lunch break, and they would normally finish by around 6 or 7 in the evening.
Wow, full days, yeah.
It was a
Beautiful,
full day. And so, yeah, we've been doing those up until a little over a year ago. We were doing some in Europe, some in Thailand as well. When I was 22, I read this book about this holy man, this guru in India. And as soon as I read it, it was like, I got to go see this man. And so when I just turned 23, I traveled to India and throughout Southeast Asia. And this started my spiritual journey. And it was literally just the beginning. After that, there was investigation into past life regression work, healing work, psychotherapy type work, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then about 15 years ago, I came across the first of the enlightened teachers, Western enlightened teachers. People like Eckhart Tolle, Tony Parsons, Jeff Foster, and Antakranti. There's lots of them.
Yeah.
And that, in a way, started me down a new path. But breathwork came much later. I came to Thailand to work as a diving instructor.
In Koh Tao? No.
Koh Tao, Koh Lanta, which I loved. And I didn't actually have any plans on finishing it. But life had other plans for me, like it does. And so I came here, and within a week I found them both.
Perfect. And so you stayed like on and off for 7 years, eh?
9.5 years.
9.5 years now.
9.5 years now.
Whoa.
So
That's a beautiful story. And Edward is very well known in Koh Phangan, indeed. He's one of the senior teachers. Because I'll say that Koh Phangan, it's a place that welcomes different kind of people, right?
Yeah.
And you have lots of trainings and lots of new teachers being made in Koh Phangan, which is absolutely beautiful, yeah? And then very often they can find a space and start practicing immediately. So you have classes with junior teachers, like sort of people who've been teaching for a while, and then you have a bunch of senior teachers, people that have been doing this for rather a long time, and they are very highly professional, and certainly Edward is one of these like more higher tier, I'll say. Is that correct? Yes?
Yeah. I mean, my breathwork journey started about 1.5 years after I got here. Someone was doing a very short breathwork training, and I'd heard about rebirthing. And I'd heard people say, wow, this is really powerful. And I'm like, well, I've never tried it. So I went along to her free talk to introduce the session. I'm like, okay, it sounds interesting. But before I sign up to anything, I wanna try it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I tried a breathwork session. And I can say for certain, it was probably the most powerful, most ecstatic experience of my life. I'd never experienced anything that intense.
Sure.
But it was beautiful intense. So after that, I was like, okay, let's do, it was just a short 5-day experience. And it was very beautiful, very powerful. And then after that, I was like, well, do I want to actually go ahead and work with this? So after some months, I decided, yes. So then I was like, well, okay, who do I do the full training with? And I didn't know much about, teachers of breathwork or anything. And so then the obvious question was, well, who started this?
Yeah.
Who originated?
Go to the source, yeah.
Exactly. So I looked up on the internet, and it was an American guy called Leonard. And I'm like, well, okay, when's he doing the next training? And he was doing one in Spain in the summertime when I would be in Europe. And I was perfect. And since then, both myself and I worked with a good friend of mine, Prema, for many years. And we kind of worked it out roughly, thousands of people, at least 5,000 people,
Sure.
we have taken through breathwork sessions. And the learning never ends. You're always learning about different people and what emotional baggage they're carrying. And that's what I love about it. The journey never seems to end.
Edward, you're also well known on the island because you run quite a large Facebook group which is dedicated to Koh Phangan, which is the Koh Phangan Conscious Events group.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, okay. How did it come about?
And what I wanted to do was set up a group where there were no chat posts, no posts about I've lost my dog or where can I buy spirulina, just dedicated to events. So the people that came to the island were like, okay, I'm here for a short time, I want to get the most out of it. I want to do as many events that are right for me. How do I find these events? And so I set up the group, the quite strict rules, where no other posts except events and services are allowed.
Yeah.
So that way, when people come, they can find exactly what they want really, really easily.
Sure. We use your Facebook group on a daily basis pretty much to check what's going on the island. And of course, it's dedicated to conscious events, which means sort of yoga, different holistic modalities, different gatherings involving the community here in Sri Tanu particularly.
So none of the parties are on there?
No parties.
Yeah.
That's a very separate side of the island.
Yeah.
But we love everybody, obviously. But yes.
So yeah, this group has been going, it's got to be about 5 years now.
Thank you very much for spending this lovely time with me. It's been very interesting chatting to you, and I really appreciate you, taking the time and coming here today. So, if you guys want to come and have a retreat with someone who's very experienced and try a modality like breathwork and rebirthing.
Thank you very much for having me on your show and for giving me the opportunity to explain how powerful and amazing breathwork is.
And you've done it very eloquently, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.